The gentleman from Utah is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to Chairman Issa, Speaker Boehner, and Leader Cantor for their support in allowing us to bring this piece of legislation that's come before this body before. This is not a new topic. This is not something that just sprung up with us in the last 10 days here. Mr. Speaker, on tax day 2013, I want to impress upon my colleagues that federal employees who consciously ignore the channels and processes in place to fulfill their tax obligations must be held accountable. They must be held accountable. The Federal Employee Tax Accountability Act addresses noncompliance with our tax laws by prohibiting individuals with serious delinquent tax debt from federal civilian employment. Most taxpayers file accurate tax returns and pay them on time. Most federal workers do that. The overwhelming majority of them do it. In fact, statistically, more than 96% of our federal employees do the right thing and they do it on time. But unfortunately, there's a few bad apples out there. There's a few people out there that despite all the processes, all the appeals, all the things out there, Mr. Speaker, they still choose to thumb their nose at the rest of us. And unfortunately, there are 107,000 federal workers who don't pay their taxes. It accounts for about $1 billion in uncollected taxes. In 2011, the most recent year for which the IRS data is available, they tell us that 107,658 civilian federal employees owe more than $1 billion. Now, the statistics, they have a greater compliance than the rest of the public. But let's remember, when you're unemployed, you're probably going to have a hard time complying. Employment for those that are federal workers is 100%. They have a job. They have a responsibility to pay their taxes. As the chairman indicated, the intent of the bill is simple. If you're a federal employee or applicant, you should be making a good faith effort to pay your taxes or to dispute them, as the taxpayers have a right to do. Under H.249, individuals having a serious delinquent tax debts are ineligible for federal civilian employment in the executive and legislative branch, including congressional staff. Serious delinquent tax debt is defined as an outstanding federal tax debt for which a notice of lien has been publicly filed. And there are exemptions. If you're being paid in accordance with an installment agreement, perhaps you're having your wages garnished, you have offer of compromise or wage garnishment, you're exempted. It's not going to affect you. The IRS has already told us on the record when they testified in a hearing that the overwhelming majority of the 107,000 people fall within that category. They testified to the body in the last Congress that roughly 12% of the 100,000 people would fall into this category that we're here talking about today. We've had a hearing about this. We did ask the IRS about this. And I also want to note, Mr. Chairman, on page 4 of the legislation, point C, number 3, an employee may continue to serve in a situation involving financial hardship if the continued service of such an employee is in the best interest of the United States as determined on a case-by-case basis. There's an opportunity to have the person who's in charge to make a determination. You know what? I have looked at this, and I grant this person an exception. But, as I did when I spoke to a group of HR professionals who work within the federal government, I told them about this and said, you need some tools to take care of the bad apples. I could see every one of their heads shaking. Yes, please, give us this tool. The bill requires individuals applying for federal jobs to certify they are not seriously tax delinquent. Agencies will also conduct periodic reviews of public records for tax liens, and individuals with serious delinquent tax debt may avail themselves to existing due process rights, including going before the Merit System Protection Board. In fact, in the last Congress, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Lynch, who's as passionate on this issue as you can possibly find, offered some amendments. And let me read from the record. When we accepted the amendment offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, quote, "With that refinement here, a friendly amendment, I certainly would vote for the bill if the amendment were included." The amendment was included. We did this in a bipartisan way. That's why it sailed through the House of Representatives last time and why it should sail through again. In addition, individuals have 6 months to demonstrate that their tax debt is not seriously delinquent. Something that Mr. Lynch asked for, something we agreed with, something that we moved forward with. For many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, this legislation should sound familiar because we did pass it.